Hey, everybody. Welcome to the penultimate Minute with Randy Bartlett. For those who don't know what penultimate means, blame Mike Walter, who loves to use words like penultimate and eponymous and efficacy, and he thinks he's something. One of my heroes in this business. So last week we talked a little bit about selling the price differential, and I promised that this week I would talk about how I turn the screws a little bit on our customers, and hopefully that tease brought you back, but it's not what you think. I would always try to be super transparent with my clients. I was in sales before I did this, and my approach always was, if I was sitting on the other side of the desk, what would I want to know? And then I try to use that, like what don't they know that they should know? And I'm a big believer in telling people what they need to hear instead of what they want to hear. That's how my workshops worked out. Everybody came in hoping for compliments, but that's not what they needed to hear. So they got the critique instead. My clients sort of got the same thing. And to be clear, they didn't all love it, right? Some people just didn't click with that. So be aware of it and in how you deliver. But most of the time it works pretty well. And so early on in my planning, I asked a lot of questions, and I'm talking about my first sales meeting. I did as much as I possibly could to find out about them before I sat down with them. That includes social media stalking and, asking questions. And I had a really long questionnaire I sent them in advance. I asked them a lot of questions. And then we sat down and talked. And one of the questions that I would ask them is, tell me about what your real goals are for this wedding. Like, what do you really want when this is all over? And you're looking back at it. What do you want to see looking back? And the second part of that would be, and from your guest perspective, what do you want them to be saying when they're driving home in the car? Think about the weddings you've gone to, and you're driving home afterwards, and you're talking about the wedding, and you're saying things to each other that you might not have said to the bride and groom, right? What do you want your guests to be saying about your wedding that would make you go, I'm glad we spent $4 trillion and a year of our life planning this thing? What's really important to you? And you learn a lot from that. Frequently, they would talk about, they would use superlatives like most, best, right? That sort of stuff. We want it to be, not just so fun. It's like, and then I would push that. When I talk about turning the screws, to say, so when you say fun for who? Fun for you or fun for your guests, right? When you say memorable, you mean memorable for you or for your guests? Because here's the reality. And I would say this to my clients. If what you are looking for is for you to have a great time, for you to have fun, for you to enjoy this and to make it memorable, you don't need me, right? Anybody who's competent at all can do that for you. It's your wedding. You're going to have a great time. You've ever been to a boring wedding? The answer is always yes, right? You ever been to a boring wedding, right? You know who wasn't bored at that wedding? The bride and groom, right? The bride and groom are never bored. When they're visiting with everybody, they're constantly in that moment. When you're waiting for them to visit, that's when it's crazy. Have you ever been to a receiving line? Like when you're in a receiving line waiting to talk to the couple and the key people, like that can be pretty boring. But it's not boring for them because they always have a new person coming in to talk to them every few seconds. So what is really important to you? And you have to, and we've talked about this before, you have to understand what your risk tolerance level is. Like, how much are you willing to invest to make sure that you really get what you want? Because the reality is, you can go talk to 100 DJs. They're all going to do the same thing, and they're all going to tell you they're the very best. Read reviews. They all have great reviews. Like the worst DJs have great reviews. But if you don't just, look at the stars, oh, they're, 5-star. Yeah, but read them. If the review every time says, Joe was a really nice guy and he played all of our music and people danced. Like, yeah, well, that's like a restaurant review that said, that they brought us food, it was warm, and we were able to eat it. Like that. That's not a great review. That's minimally acceptable. So turning the screws on them was like, what is really important to you? Do you really want a fun wedding that people talk about for years? Do you really want an amazing event? Or are you going to, and there's no wrong answer here, right? If all you want is, no, we don't want that. Like all we really want, we just want to be satisfied. We want to be happy. We don't want the DJ to screw it up. If that's your goal, then I'm not going to be the right person for you. And I don't say that lightly, but money counts, right? I'm more expensive than those other guys. I'm happy to give you referrals to people who are fine. If you're going to be satisfied with fine, I give you 15 referrals right now who will all charge you substantially less. But if what you want is extraordinary, right? And I don't know what your budget is. Some people would tell us the budget. Most are reluctant to do that. But I can kind of guess based on where it's going to be and the number of guests. And I would always guess really low intentionally, right? So I'm looking at their budget. I go, there's no way they can do this wedding for less than $25,000. I go, I don't know what your budget is. I'm going to guess you're probably 15,000 plus. And they would always go, oh, yeah, like, right. So it's a lot. So here's the thing. The difference, going back to what we talked about before, the difference between, okay and extraordinary here, you're going to pay a little bit more. You're going to pay an extra $1,500 for me over those other ones. But again, that represents 1% of your budget, or 10% or 20%. You can pick the number, right? Do the math in your head. It doesn't matter what it is, right? So if it's a $15,000 budget and you're $1,500 more, that's a 10% difference. But really, they're probably at $30,000. So, and you're probably not a $1,500 difference. You're probably a $600 difference, right? You're really talking about pennies here. And I go, are you willing to increase your budget in this area by 2% or whatever the number is in order to get extraordinary? And if you are, I'd love to talk to you, and you have everything that I know and can do at your disposal. If you're not, I'm fine with that too, because somebody else will book me. Like I'm always booked, right? So if you don't book me, like, and there's a way to phrase this with every client, it's a little bit different, but basically what you want them to understand is, I want to do your event. I want to work with you on this, but I don't need to. Right. So if you don't book me, somebody else is going to book me. And that was a lesson took me a long time to learn. Like, I don't have to have this booking. There are more people in search of an amazing event on any given Saturday in any market than there are DJs who are able to make that happen. That's the reality. So, I was in Sacramento. I think there are maybe 5 or 6 DJs that I can think of that would make it extraordinary. There's a lot more than 5 or 6 people that want an extraordinary wedding that day. So I'm in demand. I hope that helps. I want you to I know I went a little over a minute again, but I really want you for you to understand it. And I want you to be able to explain it to the customers and do it in such a way that you're not, I said, turning the screws, but it's really just tightening things down, right? I don't want them to get away with thinking that good enough is good enough if it's not. If it is, and for many it is, let them go. Unless you're the good enough DJ, in which case, fine. I have no problem with that either. But, if you're the good enough DJ, don't sell yourself as extraordinary. And if you're the extraordinary DJ, don't settle for the good enough prices. That's it. get our DVDs online, DJ1%solution.com. Big clearance sale going on right now. And that's going to end January 1st. We go back to regular pricing, and whoever buys on there does. I'm done promoting and selling and speaking and all of those things on January 1st. So next week is our very last minute. I hope you'll all join me there. And I don't think that one's going to be a minute either. See you. Have a great holiday.